Welcome to our Bonuscast here at Life Chapel. My name is Jonathan Perry. I am the lead pastor. Normally, Grant Perry is sitting in this seat, but today I get to sit in this seat, and I am delighted to have Tim McLeod with me. And Tim and I have worked together for almost 20 years. I've been saying almost 20 years for about 20 years. I feel like that 10 years ago I started saying 20 years. It just seems like that we've spent so much of our time together. So a little bit of our history is that you guys got saved at Life Chapel 20 years ago?
Yes.
Something like that?
Year 2000.
2000, okay. So 20 years ago, and have been just a vital part of our church for that entire 20 years because Nicole started working in the office within just a few months.
Yeah.
And then you guys were on staff with us for probably 10 or 12 years in various capacities. And so you and Nicole and your family have added tremendous value to Life Chapel. And you are also a police officer.
Yes.
Here in the area. And we're glad to have you on tonight. And a few weeks ago, we had on some people from our community, Kaisha and Pastor JD, some African Americans talking about the situation we're living in and how we can properly handle that. And that is very important that we listen and learn from what people are saying and what people are feeling and what people are thinking. And both of them gave us such a great perspective. And so I think on the outset, you and I would agree, and you're free to disagree, but we're not here to bring an opposing view, but another perspective.
Correct. Yeah.
And you know, as peace, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall see God.
Yes.
And not the peacekeepers, but the peacemakers. And that's what we're trying to do, is to continually push toward kingdom agenda. And what does the kingdom say? And how does the kingdom want us to respond to these things? And how do we receive godly counsel from various perspectives to find balance, and to find truth in the middle of all that. So tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history, some things that maybe we missed, your family. Start with your family. Let's do that. Let's talk about your family. So you got a great family.
Yeah. So when I moved here 20 years ago, it was just my wife, Nicole, and our daughter, Samantha, at that time. And we were just basically, the job is what brought us here.
Okay.
My family lives in the area. They had for some time. But the job is what got us to move here. We found Life Chapel fairly quickly and have been here ever since. And in that time, the family has grown. I now have Victoria and Connor, so who are all, just love it here. Yeah.
But now both you and Nicole are from Northwest Ohio, not particularly Oregon, but Northwest Ohio.
Right. We're both from Lima.
Okay.
Yeah.
How'd your mom and dad get up here?
My dad worked
because of you?
No, he was here probably 10 years before me.
Okay, gotcha.
He worked for the BP refinery in Lima and transferred up here to Oregon to their refinery.
Gotcha.
So he had lived here 10, 12 years before I did.
Yeah. Does he still have that Corvette?
He does.
Oh, that guy.
Telling you. My son thinks it's his when he's 16.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, your mom and dad are great people.
Yeah.
We've just learned to love them. And so tell me about what motivated you to get into law enforcement.
So it's really unique for me because I know a lot of guys, the time they were little boys, I want to be a police officer, and they would dress up at Halloween or, have the action figures. It never crossed my mind until halfway through my senior year of high school.
Really?
Up to that point, I was looking at archaeology. I was looking at astronomy, something in the sciences.
I could see you with archaeology.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think it was Indiana Jones that kind of pushed me
there
that
you
route.
go.
But about halfway through my senior year, of course, looking back, I think God has just orchestrated everything in my life. And I just had this idea and this desire to get into law enforcement. I'm not going to lie, being a young man, it looked cool. A lot of cool toys.
No doubt.
The TV of that time, it was the late 90s. So there was that cool factor. But
so what would that have been, Miami Vice? Or
Miami
was that
Vice.
Okay.
Yeah, that was there.
Miami Vice.
The old cops, the old style cop show.
Yeah.
That was from way back then.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Before Live PD and all the
Right.
newer.
Yep.
But it just looked fun, interesting, adventurous. And it took several years, probably within the last 10 years, that I've finally seen, okay, now I know. And it really does have to do with that peacemaking. I've always had a desire for my community that we create an atmosphere where they, being the community, can just thrive. They don't have to worry about this. They don't have to worry about that. But it's an atmosphere where they can pursue what they want to do in life. And I've tried to model that with my own family, creating an atmosphere where my wife and my kids can just pursue, just do what you want to do in life, and I will take care of everything else.
I love that leadership, because that's what, you're just a natural born leader, and I've seen that a lot. So you were motivated in one sense by the cop shows and the adventure, but it's not easy getting into a force.
Right.
And so what kept you motivated until you kind of landed in your groove, if you will? Because you were at multiple places before you came to Oregon, right? Or was it just one?
I've been to Oregon, was my third department.
So you started out pretty low on the totem pole.
Oh,
I would imagine pretty small units.
In fact, I'm actually from a town called Harrod, which is
okay.
And I say I'm from Lima because if I say Harrod, nobody knows.
I've never heard of Harrod.
Is that in the Middle East? So Harrod is a very small village, about 10 miles east of Lima. It's in the Allen East School District, and I was 18 years old when I started the academy. I got out 2 years later with a certificate saying you're blessed to be a cop. Well, in the state of Ohio, you're 20 years old is too young. You have to be 21 to at least carry a gun.
Wow.
So I petitioned.
So you were licensed to be a cop.
Yes.
Before you could be a cop.
Right. So
well, that's a motivation right there. That's pretty impressive.
So I went to the mayor of this small village, who was also the barber.
Okay.
He cut my hair when I was a boy. And he said, I will put you on the department, but very limited. You're not going to be doing much. Not that there's anything to do there anyway.
Right.
I mean, this town didn't even have a traffic light.
Yeah.
So that's where I got my start. I worked about a year just on their auxiliary. It was I had to buy all my own equipment, well over $1,000 at that time. Wasn't a paid position.
Yeah.
So I was there for about a year until I moved into an actual department.
Okay.
And that was in Lipsick, Ohio.
So you sacrificed to get in on this. Wasn't like, the doors flew open and you walked in as a lieutenant.
No, it was a lot of financial,
sacrifices.
At that time. Yeah.
But what the reason I'm pulling on that is because it shows the purity of the motivation. Money wasn't the motivator.
No.
The position of like, I'm going to be, the chief in 2 years, that wasn't a motivator. It was really from a pure heart of I want to add value to my community.
Yeah. And that's where I was born and raised, and I just wanted to be a part.
So then you went to Lipsick.
Yep.
And then from there to Oregon?
There, at that time, my wife was offered a job in Michigan running a store. She was a manager of a Tractor Supply.
That's right, yeah.
And again, this whole, just wanting her to succeed. And so she took that job. I quit my job thinking I'll find something in Michigan, which isn't that easy to go from state to state in law enforcement
because
and find employment.
Is it all of the different requirements?
The requirement, the
really?
certifications.
So they're that much different from state to state?
Yeah.
Really?
So I started the process of getting certified in Michigan, and that took about a year.
Now let me just stop you right here. Is there federal requirements and then state requirements and then local requirements? Is that kind of how it works?
You have to be licensed through your state.
But is there a minimum federally
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Really?
There's no federal.
So every state just kind of figures it out on their own?
Yeah, they have their own certification process, which basically is a written test and a firearms test.
Okay.
Some states are more difficult than others.
Mm-hmm.
The law's pretty much the same state to state, but there are enough differences to where you need, what may be legal in Ohio is illegal in Michigan.
Gotcha.
And so there was that little, learning curve there.
So, and let's just jump, and we'll come back to this. From your opinion, should there be a federal guideline? I mean, I don't know if you want to share your personal opinion on that, but just should there be federally, this is what's acceptable and this is what's not? At least a minimal standard of some level.
I think there should, the federal government may have oversight in it, but I'm a big believer in the states, designing their own thing.
Okay.
And for the most part, states do that. At least in my experience with the limited states that I've seen, I think there should be extreme, in order to be a certified police officer, it should be tough. There should be requirement, and I can go into some of the requirements that I had to go through.
Yeah, we'll get to that next.
But that was
the reason I'm asking that is I don't think either one of us are for big government.
No.
So I was just kind of pushing on you a little bit to say that that's probably something that should remain at the state level.
Yeah, I think the state should mandate that.
And that makes a lot of sense. So you were in Michigan, took you about a year to get certified there. Yeah. And then how long did you find a department?
So I was in the running. In the meantime, I worked at Walmart, believe it or not.
Really?
I worked loss prevention, which, if you don't know what that is, you're basically looking for shoplifters.
And you're undercover. You're just dressed like a normal person walking through the store all day long.
Hated that job. The correlation between that and law enforcement is not, and I was horrible at it. Yeah. It's just not my thing. So they offered me a manager over the sporting goods, and I actually loved that job.
Really?
That was probably, outside of law enforcement, one of my favorite jobs.
That's interesting.
But in the meantime, I was in the running for 2 departments in Michigan, and at the same time, my parents had contacted me and said, "Hey, the city of Oregon's hiring." So I, followed that up, and obviously I came here.
Awesome. Okay. And that would have been?
That was in 99.
99, yeah. So let's talk about your qualifications. So we know you were motivated from just a very sincere place. You weren't motivated for power. You weren't motivated for money. You weren't motivated to have a badge, very pure heart. And I know you, and I know that that's true. Talk to me about your qualifications. What qualifications do you have? I don't even know what all that means.
There's certifications that's needed in order to become a police officer, and then once you're there, then a lot of people don't realize how diverse law enforcement is as far as how many different areas.
Even in a local department.
Even in a local department, it's more limited. The bigger the department, the bigger the opportunities. But there's a lot of qualifications you can get within your department for specialized units, I guess.
Gotcha.
So I went, generally speaking, you can go the investigative route or the more tactical route. I went the tactical route and became a SWAT team. Have been on that for, I think, 18 years now. But then there's investigations, detectives and investigators.
But you never saw yourself?
Never really had a desire to go that route. But what I did after 5 years of working road patrol, an opportunity to come to a high school opened up. And it was for a 3-year position. At that time, I was youth pastor here. And I thought, okay, that's quite a correlation there. So, I loved working with teenagers. I had, my youngest was in that age group.
That was right when she was going into that teen years,
So I thought, I'll try it. It's a 3-year commitment. If I don't like it in 3 years, I can get out, go back to the road. That was 15 years ago.
Wow.
And I'm still in the high school.
Yeah.
Just fell in love with working with kids, working with the staff members at the school. I mean, it's just
So you're considered a resource officer.
yeah, school resource officer.
And there are some states that are pushing back against resource officers right now.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I don't think state of Ohio is one of them.
No.
Tell me, as a resource officer, what do you do? Is there a story you can share? What is it that a resource officer does? I mean, do they just walk around all day investigating kids, handcuffing kids, taking kids to jail? I mean, when you think of a policeman, that's what you think they do.
Yeah.
All day long. They just take people to jail, or they just, pull people over and
Right.
give them tickets. And I have to tell you, I got pulled over recently, but I'll tell you that in a minute. In Oregon. But anyway, what does a resource officer, what do you do?
So on paper, and I guess our number one job is safety, in a climate of school shootings, which that's kind of on the back burner now.
Yeah.
But for a while there, it just was a big thing. And our number one goal was the safety of the kids. I mean, that was first and foremost. So talking about, qualifications, I went to certain schools and trainings and became certified in school safety as far as active shooter training. Some nationally recognized schools out there. I got certified in to be that protector of the school. So,
which is more qualifications.
More
Because we were talking
qualifications.
about qualifications, and this is more of that qualification part.
Yep. So a big part of my job, at least initially, was training staff members and students and how to respond to active shooters or active threats. It doesn't have to be somebody with a gun. It could be, any threat to the school. So it's preparing them in order to be able to deal with that and how to make it through that. So that was a large part of it. But, to be honest, most of my days are sitting with students who are crying because they have issues at home, and it's talking to them about, their parents and siblings and bullying issue. That's a huge thing. Kids that are being picked on. And the reality is I've probably, when it comes to physical arrest, because there's non-physical, you can arrest somebody without actually taking them into custody.
Right.
But actually physically arresting students in 15 years, probably 5 at the most.
And that probably had to be a pretty big offense.
It was serious.
Yeah.
In order to be taken out in handcuffs. The majority of the time, I try, and one of the benefits of being a school resource officer is I have the time to actually wade through, okay, what's the real issue? Not just the criminal act you did, but let's find out the real issue and let's deal with that, and we'll come back to the criminal side. And the majority of times, I don't even have to go the criminal route. I can deal with it outside of the courts, outside of actual law enforcement,
which is a part of
with
that
it.
peacemaker.
Yes.
That's a peacemaker.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that because I know we've had a lot of conversations over the years about just how you handle things and how you approach things. And I love the fact that you always go in looking for the solution rather than saying, I'm your solution.
Right, right.
I'm going to fix you right now, and giving somebody a record for the rest of their life.
Right.
Of course, I know with kids, once they get 18 or 21, it's expunged, but still.
And there's some things, that I can't, that the state mandates, truancies, and there's certain things that I kind of have to do. But for the most part, it's mostly just sitting down with these kids, their parents, and just wading through the behavior, not necessarily the crime. Let's find out why this is going on. And most of the time that works.
Yeah. I love that. So let's talk more about your qualifications. I'm stuck on that.
Yeah.
So you've SWAT, you've been through active shooter.
Yep.
Of course, all your basics.
Yep.
What else?
So, and each one of those you can break down into further units.
Okay.
So within SWAT, I've done, I started out, I think, doing breaching, which didn't last long because I'm not that big of a guy. Usually breachers are your big
guys that knock the doors down.
They're the door kickers.
Yeah.
So I did a little bit with that. I did shield.
Okay.
Shield work, less lethal. A lot of the gas, well, we don't shoot wooden bullets or anything like that, but they're like foam
Yeah.
foam balls.
Okay.
Less lethal, and then currently team leader.
Okay.
So within, the SRT, there's multiple areas.
Gotcha.
Just like within the school, there's the active shooter training, there's the bowling training, there's psychology. Now, I'm not a psychologist,
But you've had to study some element of it.
But I've had to
because that's a
study.
lot of what you do.
Right, more of the counseling part.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not a certified counselor, and I make sure that's known.
Right.
And there are people there that are, if I need to go that route. But it does help to have that counseling background.
At least a basic knowledge.
Yeah.
And I know you've done a lot of that here. And again, we've been very careful at the church to say we don't counsel people.
Right.
But we can talk, we can listen, we can coach, we can call it 10 other things.
Yeah.
But
And what I found is that when I do go back to the road in the summer, and in
because
the
then
winter,
you do go back to the road when you're on your breaks.
Right. So working road patrol, being able to talk with people it's so much easier to be able to have that conversation with people than to ramp up and escalate. And so working in the school, I think, has made me a better road patrol officer because I do have a little more patience.
And having to practice the counseling and the psychology.
Right.
That's interesting. So I'll tell you my getting pulled over story.
Yeah.
So we do our license plates through the mail. So I didn't get a sticker, but I got a whole new plate. And I'm like, why did I get a new plate? So my sticker was like 2 months overdue because I had this plate, and I'm like, do I put the sticker on the old plate or do I replace the plate or what? So I was literally headed up to the license bureau when I get pulled over in Oregon by a police. And I have a CCW.
Yeah.
So when he pulls me over, I put my hands on the wheel and I roll down the window, and he comes up and I say, officer, I have a CCW and my hands are on the wheel and I won't move until you tell me it's okay. And he's like, just relax.
Yeah.
Are you carrying now? And I said, I'm not carrying right now. And he said, do you know your license plate is way past due, 2 or 3 months? And I'm like, yeah, well, I had the plate sitting in my passenger seat. And I'm like, here's my problem. And he kind of got a chuckle out of it. And super nice guy. But I said, thank you so much for not giving me a ticket. And he kind of looked at me funny. And he's like, I don't give tickets for that stuff if there's an explanation behind it. I mean, if there's some like, I ain't doing that, and you can't tell me what to do, and what do they call the people that don't want driver's license and stuff?
Sovereign citizen.
Yes, if you're I'm just like, so he was super nice, but man, that's the first time I've been pulled over in, I don't remember when. I mean, years, but man, I tried to do everything I could just to just don't do anything stupid here,
And then with the whole COVID shutdown, everything's out of whack now.
Yeah.
People with expired licenses, and
I know,
and that's excused.
Yeah, I got two boys.
Yeah.
That have they bought not new cars, but they have new cars, but with the temporary tags.
Yeah.
And it's been like every time they go up there, it's like, 3-hour wait or something. So, so you've had a ton of training.
Yeah.
So tell me about some of the toughest training you've been through. And you say you're trained more toward the tactical side. Mm-hmm. So I mean that's where you get into all different types of arrest.
Yeah.
All different types of control.
Yeah.
Maneuvers, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So
there's I can break that in there. There's the physical demanding, and then there was the intellectual demanding, and they were both separate.
Wow.
The physical, would definitely be the SWAT. And kind of a funny story. Ohio has one of the largest tactical officer conferences in the country. In fact, we have officers from other parts of the country that come here for ours.
Really?
Last year we had over 2,500 attendees. And then every day of this conference, there's training by some of the biggest name trainers in the country. Well, me and my partner signed up last year for a class that we knew had nothing to do with anything we would ever be involved in, but we're getting older, so we just wanted to do something fun. So we signed up for Israeli Special Forces, did a class on anti-abduction, or how to not be abducted class. I had a bruised rib at the end of it. Very, just beat up really, really bad.
Wow.
So it was a lot more than I bargained for. And again, it's something I'll never need here.
But now you know you really won't need it.
Right. So yeah, the SRT or the SWAT, the firearms, all of that stuff is physically demanding. I'm a firearms instructor with 4 different platforms, and that can be very physical. Now, intellectually, I went through a class that was geared towards teaching. It's basically to get your certificate in order to instruct in academies in Ohio. And so in order to do that, this whole class is structured around you making lesson plans for various topics, and then you teach a class. But you have to outline it the way the state mandates. And so it was a week-long class initially, and it was very demanding. It was an 8-hour day in class, and then easily another 6 to 8 hours in the evening doing work for the next day.
So and you did that for a week?
For a week. Came home for the weekend and then went back for another week, and then recently did another week for the legal portion to be able to teach legal issues.
So you are certified to teach?
Yeah.
Excellent.
In academies.
Right.
Yeah.
Excellent. You see that maybe in the future somewhere?
I would like to, yeah. I love teaching.
You're a gifted teacher. That's your gifting. In fact, I was just talking to somebody the other day, and your name came up, and we both just almost simultaneously said, he's such a gifted teacher. So now let's get down to some nitty gritty. Have you ever worked with a bad cop?
I have been around.
Maybe that's a better way to say it. Have you ever been around a bad cop?
I've been around. What I can say is we have systems in place that deal with that.
So you guys are very proactive.
Yeah. Yes. There's a system in place that catches that, because we can talk about my opinion as far as what's needed in law enforcement, because I do agree that there is a problem that needs fixed. But, and I have my opinion on how that can happen. But I'm fortunate that I live in an area, and especially a department, that has focused on that for years. And
so you guys, for years, you've been there almost over 20 years now.
Right.
And so you all have a history of being very proactive.
Yeah.
Of not putting up with bad cops.
Right.
And they're out there.
They are.
And anybody with a half a brain would know that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I don't care what occupation you pick. I mean, just take mine. Pastors. Yeah. There's pastors out there that are just,
right.
They shouldn't be pastoring.
Yeah.
They're really not helping the flocks. They're, cops, store managers, butchers, butlers, bakers, and candlestick makers.
And I was just talking about this with my wife. It's, police officers they're not captured from Mars and brought here to work. The police officers are you. They're your community. They are a representation of you. We're citizens just like you. And so police officers, and the ranks are filled with community members. There's certain things you have to go through, but anybody has the opportunity to become a police officer. They're not handpicked. They're not special people. They are community members that just took a different route and got the certifications. And, so to say there's bad police officers, there's bad. It's a people issue.
That's a good way to put it. It's just a people issue.
It's a people issue.
And that same person could be a bad cop and get fired and go over and manage a store and be a bad manager.
Right.
Because whatever is in his mind, patterns, thoughts, whatever.
The difference being is we're in a position, though, that, if I have a bad electrician, well, I guess I could have a house fire. That would be pretty bad.
Yeah,
but generally, if I have a bad whatever, it's not typically going to cost me my life or a loved one.
Talk about that, yeah.
So,
and I think that's where people tip.
Right.
They don't understand.
Yeah, and we do. We understand. Vastly, by and large, the vast number of police officers understand the position that we have, the authority that we've been given, and what that means to citizens. And if there is a bad cop, what does that mean? And that could end a life.
Yeah.
So we understand it. We don't like it as much, it just, to us, it's like we want to get rid of that as fast as anybody else would.
Yeah.
Because we suffer when one of us is bad, we suffer with the rest of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a people issue. And it's something that we try to identify very quickly, and then try to root that out.
And I like that you the proactive side of that says, okay, we're looking at this, we're looking for this, and we're not going to tolerate it.
Right.
We're not going to put it up or put up with it. So I heard a stat the other day. I think there's 360 million people in America. That in America there are 380 million interactions between officers and civilians every year.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah.
Which means a few things. Number one, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a bunch. But number two, it also means that some of these people are having multiple interactions.
Yeah.
Because if you got more interactions than you have population, and the average person I know probably doesn't have an interaction with a cop once a year, that means you've got a number of people that are in the hospital industry, people coming into the emergency room for pills or whatever they call them, frequent flyers.
Yep.
I don't know what do you call those people?
Yeah, frequent flyers.
Yeah, is that a title?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I think about that, how many of course you're not on the road. So for your department, do you all, I know you track it, but do you know how many tickets, how many arrests, how many?
We do keep track of that. We keep track. There's a lot of oversight, and going back originally, we talked about the federal government. There are some oversight measures that they take on individual departments. So, for example, we keep statistics on how many calls for service. So I think, we get on average about 4,000 calls a year.
Okay.
For service, and those
which is about 100, over 100 a day.
Right. So that could be anything from my car broke down to, your worst case scenario, murder. We get the range. So we keep statistics on that. We keep statistics on how many tickets we write. We keep statistics on who we write tickets to. There's oversight on that. Yeah. As far as man, woman, black, white. Every nationality is represented.
Right.
So we have to, keep statistics on that. That's tracked.
And would you say that part of that purpose is to make sure that there's not profiling going on and other things like that?
Yeah.
Because if they see an elevated point here at some point, they're being like, oh, you guys got to, you can't be profiling. Right.
So that's all monitored. Yeah. And then now, with body cameras, dash cameras.
So you guys have all that?
We have all that.
Okay.
Yeah. We've had body cameras for probably 4 years.
Okay.
Okay. And by and large, the officers want them.
Yeah.
That's definitely something, I don't know.
Sure. For their safety.
Yeah.
No doubt. So here's what's happening right now is there's a huge push to defund the police. Talk to us about what that really means from your perspective, and maybe even not just your perspective, but from the facts.
Okay.
What do you know about that? Because when I hear defund police, I'm thinking get rid of all the police.
Yeah.
And I've heard that it's not, we're not trying to get rid of all the police. We're doing this and this and this. And it's like, just talk into that. What does that mean when we hear defund the police?
Right.
Because that freaks me out.
Right. So, yeah, you're right. You kind of have to look at who's talking about that. What do they mean by defund? Because that's different than disband.
Okay, so explain those two. Obviously, disband is we're shutting down the police department. We're going to turn the police station into a grocery store.
Yeah.
And it's over.
Yeah, that's...
Do you know people actually talking about some of that? Not know people, but have you
heard it. Nothing, that's kind of the.
So that's not really what people are talking about when they are.
There are people that talk about that, but that's nobody I know locally.
Those are ankle biters.
Yeah, that's
not high level politicians and governmental leaders.
I mean, I just don't even know how that would work. But the defunding, okay, that's something we can talk about.
Okay.
Because now we're talking about taking money from law enforcement agencies and putting it towards community programs, which, okay.
Could be what?
It could be housing. It could be education. It could be, mentor.
I've heard social workers.
Social working.
Yeah. Okay.
So
it could be all kind of things.
Right. Now we're in the realm of again, this is my opinion. That's realistic. Okay. That's a conversation we can have. So you can look at a police department and it's all public information. You can find out exactly what a city, community pays for that department and where that money goes.
Okay.
And
that's all public knowledge.
It's as far as I know, that's public information. So you can see, okay, this amount of the budget goes towards weapons, because weapons get old and malfunction. So there's upkeep of equipment.
Sure.
A part of that budget goes to vehicles. Part of that budget, so there's all these. Well,
training.
The
you could go down the whole list.
Majority of the budget goes towards training and equipment.
Really?
So
because you wouldn't think that because you don't hear about that or you don't see it.
Right.
It's not visible.
Right. Training.
Nobody knows you went to 3 weeks of training.
Right. Now, that is a department by department issue. I know departments that hand their officers 25 bullets because that's what you have in the state of Ohio. That's what you have to qualify with every year. This is your training. You get 25 bullets, pass the test, and I'll see you next year. To me, wow, I can't comprehend that.
Now that's scary.
That's scary. I'm fortunate to work in a community that says whatever training you need, you get.
Wow. So you could walk in and say, you know what, I feel like to do better, to be better at my job, I need this A, B, or C training. And they would say, we'll figure out how to make it happen.
Right. And I shouldn't say whatever training you want, you get. It has to be relevant to your job, your specific place in that job. So they're not going to send us to bomb tech schools or but when it comes to de-escalation, when it comes to weapons handling, when it comes to dealing with community, they will say, yeah, we will pay to send you to that training because there's a benefit on the other side. Not all communities do that. And when we're talking about defunding or at least reform, I'm on board with that. Departments should be sending their officers to more training. But the thing is, if you defund, that money's coming out of their training budget. It's going to come out of, the very things that we need more of, to make these, the police officers better at what they do. So I don't know how that's going to work. I don't see how you can take money from an organization and then say, but you need to create better employees. I don't know how that's going to work yet.
But we're going to take the budget that you need to make better employees and put it somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm all for officers needing more training, and I'm a trainer, so of course I'm biased, but training it's critical in our field. I mean, it's a professional job. You get a professional license. We need to train and learn like any profession. And that training should be ongoing, yearly training. But that takes money.
Yeah.
So, to defund, it's a conversation that, we can have that, but let's look at the pros and cons. There's going to be consequences for doing that. Maybe there's other solutions.
Yeah. So do you guys have, because you said you've been through some classes on social work and counseling and, minimal amount, but something. You're not a certified social worker, you're not a certified counselor, but you've been through some training. What are your thoughts on bringing in to your department social workers that would ride with you or that would show up at certain situations?
That's interesting. The only area that we've ever done that is with our SWAT team. We've had actual trauma doctors come on call outs with us for medical, if somebody gets hurt. We have a trauma doctor right there. Outside of that, we haven't really seen too many, social workers responding with us. Not that it's a bad idea. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm just saying I haven't
your
seen
history.
that. Now, we've had social workers come in. We have a this might be a national program. I know it's at least statewide. It's called CIT, which is Crisis Intervention Team. Probably 95 to 98% of my department is trained in that. So that's where, I don't know if they were social workers, psychologists, but that talk about a rigorous school. These guys said that school was insanely hard mentally because they walked you through how to deal with emotionally disturbed people or, people that are in crisis, and it's all about verbal, how to de-escalate. We actually will call, before it really took off, when we just had a few officers, we would actually call them to the scene so they can use that skill to de-escalate. Now, like I said, at any given shift, we probably have 3 officers that are trained in it.
Interesting.
And that's, like I said, that might be a national thing. It's really gaining popularity.
And do you think because of some of the current events that is probably going to go up?
Yeah,
you think?
I do, and I think it's a positive.
Yeah.
Learning how to deal with, there's some people that are just, violent. They're there to hurt people. They're there to hurt citizens. If you intervene, that's different. Let's look at the people that are, psychologically there's something going on. They're not necessarily a threat to you, although they can be. If you mishandle the situation, they can definitely be a threat. But using force against them initially may not be the best idea. Probably isn't the best idea. Let's use de-escalation tactics, and more departments are going to that. More and more officers are being trained in that.
Yeah.
To have an actual caseworker with us, I've never really considered that.
Who's paying for that?
Well,
and where does that money come from?
My thinking is if they get hurt, if this is
that's what I thought.
If this is a situation that does go wrong and they get hurt, am I liable for their safety and them and mine? And again, not saying it's not possible, but that might be the biggest hurdle to that is. Keeping them safe in these volatile.
One of the things that came to my mind is, I just heard on the radio or saw on TV some statement about, well, you could take a social worker or somebody and send them to nonviolent. Well, I would say there's probably a number of nonviolent situations you show up at that turn violent.
Yeah.
When you walk in, it's, fairly calm or maybe just a little ruffled, and then it escalates quick.
Right.
And so I'm like, whoa, who's going to take care of that situation?
Yeah. So. And the end result is it's going to dictate how the situation goes.
Yeah.
If I'm there just to calm somebody down and, leave them there, it's going to be a lot easier to calm them down because I can back off, I can walk away and I can be very non-threatening to them and then just walk away and leave. If the situation dictates where a family member saying they need to go to a crisis center or, a lot of people don't realize in the state of Ohio, if you threaten suicide, a police officer has the authority to take you into custody and take you to a hospital. And the hospital has the authority to keep you there, against your will, So if that's a situation where we're walking into where somebody's threatening to kill themselves, my options just got really small. Now I'm knowing, okay, at the end of all this, you have to come with me. And so how do I get that to happen without a fight, a struggle, So it's a difficult situation. I definitely think, training in that area is very vital.
Yeah. We got a question here that somebody sent to us, and it's, Tim, what's your thoughts on DeWine's statements today about police being under a governing board similar to a medical board or a board of nursing? Are you familiar with that?
What I'm assuming they're talking about is if you're a doctor and there's a malpractice suit against you, you can lose your license and you won't be able to practice medicine. With law enforcement, if there's a, quote, malpractice or, I guess in my case, it would be a use of force that was unjustified, and I get fired from a department, I can go next door to this department,
Start over.
So I'm assuming that's what they're talking about, is let's eliminate that possibility that if you get fired from here because of your
Actions.
you can't now go over here and become their problem. I'm for that.
Yeah.
I think
Which I think anybody
would
be for that.
And I guess I was always under the assumption that at the very least, if we let somebody go and they go to this department, that department's going to call us and say, hey, what kind of employee? Why did he leave there? We will tell them why he was let go. Why would they hire him in the first place? But I think that would be good oversight. I mean, if you get let go from one department for a use of force, then that should, eliminate your possibility of going somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. Just, and I know you're not on the road a lot.
Lately I have been.
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah. When school shut down.
Yeah.
How many of those would you say became confrontational with just on any given day? You do 10 calls, you do 10 pullovers, you do 10 whatever.
Yeah. On
an average, what would be a percentage of things that go kind of wild?
It's very low. And one thing I found out real quick, going back to those 80s shows, that's not real law enforcement. It's not, you're not running and gunning and taking down drug cartels. And although there are agents that do that, by and large, law enforcement can be very boring. Imagine sitting in a car for 7 hours and 30 minutes doing nothing. And then the last 30 minutes you're running for your life. It's that quick. But those types of situations are very minimal. And again, the smaller the community, the smaller the chances. New York's probably different. Those guys are probably doing a lot more running and gunning. But what we found, at least factually, our afternoon shift is by far the busiest. So that runs from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m.
That makes sense.
Yeah, they have the most, problems. Day shift is a lot of thefts. Walmart, Meijer, Menards. Hey, we have shoplifters, businesses being, theft and neighbor disputes.
Okay.
A lot of those on day shift. Their grass clippings blew into my yard. That's real law enforcement there.
Wow. So all of these little minutia things you all have to do.
That's daily.
And that's every day, all day. Yeah. Wow. And people don't even think about the redundancy of what you're doing and what you said, boring.
Yeah. It's a lot of boring with a lot of your hair's on fire. It's those extremes. Our afternoon shift does a lot more, usually with the intoxication. So when you add substance abuse, that's going to create an issue where things can go bad. They deal a lot more with domestics. That's a situation where things can definitely go bad. So usually if we're in an encounter where use of force is used, it's usually because of intoxication or it's a violent situation that we're coming into, like a domestic. And even then, I would say it's a lot more rare than people would imagine. And then midnight shift, they do a lot more with the intoxicated drivers and a lot more of boring,
sitting, because everything is going to slow down at 1, 2, 3 o'clock, depending on what night of the week it is.
Usually on midnights, if you get a call, it's something bad. Most people are in bed. Out of that 4,000 calls that I mentioned that we get a year, it's in the hundreds of how many people actually get arrested. And usually that's because of a domestic or a drinking and driving, something along those lines. And then you throw in the psychological, we do deal with a lot of emotionally, situations.
Charged,
somebody went to a hospital and, they walked out in the hospital saying, hey, they shouldn't be out, So we're the ones that have to go deal with that. It's, for the most part, those violent encounters, those use of force encounters are pretty low.
All right. So I need your help. I love cops, and they've canceled it. And I am highly offended and hurt by this.
Yeah.
Then I got onto Live PD. And I mean, Sharon and I, Fridays and Saturdays, man, we were putting the bad guys away.
Yeah.
With our bowl of popcorn, man, we were putting them away. And they canceled that. Then they took Elmer Fudd's gun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is really disturbing.
Yeah.
And then they've canceled Paw Patrol, which is even more disturbing. How do we get these 4 things back that are just crucial to American life?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And then Lego. I think Lego.
Yes, Lego took out all their cops.
Yeah.
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 See, I don't know. I mean, if Lego can't save you, who's going to save you?
Right.
If you
right.
don't have Live PD to make you feel safe anymore, because we've always enjoyed just watching those things because we just believe, in policemen and what they're trying to do, and we've always taught our family, that you respect authority, and that you just shut up and do what they ask you to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very interesting position the world's in today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So bottom line, what's the biggest problem you think in this whole field? And I know that's a big, broad question that may not have an answer, but what do you think the bottom line problem is?
In my opinion, bottom line, it's a people issue. There's just, no matter where you go, no matter what era you live in, people are people, and there's sin, Yeah. And when I watch, when I do see these use of force videos, if I'm talking about cops and, the ones that aren't justified, it makes you think, well, why in the world would you do that? Mm-hmm. And it's just a people, I don't know, anger, hate.
Yeah.
It's just hard
but the sin nature, you mentioned that.
Sin
and
nature.
I think that's obviously a root is the spirit of murder, the spirit of death.
Yep.
The hostilities, all of that, anger
so
issues.
My fear is, because it's so heated right now, and there's so, the extremes are so far that my fear is that we're going to miss the common ground to where we can actually fix things.
Yeah.
If any time in history where there has been a time where we can actually make some good change that needs to be changed, now is that time, and I fear we're missing it.
Wow.
Because it's gotten so extreme that, the ones that can actually make the change are saying, I can't deal with it. I can't compete with the loud, and my fear is that we don't make the change that needs to be made.
Yeah.
How do we deal with people? How do we find, how do we predict how this person's going to be? What kind of officer are they going to be? Is there a way to even do that?
Yeah.
These are the things that we can actually work on. How can we solve this? And I'm just fearing that we're going to miss it because it's, defund and disband, and
it's hard to have a conversation with bullhorns.
Right. Yeah.
Just screaming at each other's face. It's just hard to have that conversation. And I know you as a peacemaker, you would not have a problem sitting down and talking with anybody.
No, absolutely not.
To say, let's work toward a solution, not fuss about the problem.
Yeah.
So how can we pray for law enforcement? If you give us 3 things that we need to pray for law enforcement, what would that look like?
I would say, number 1, morale. Right now it's, there's this feeling of, even I work with so many good guys, and I was just talking to my wife about this the other day. I wish people could see, just the everyday, holding somebody's hand at a crash scene that's terminal. And to see that and to experience that. Our officers do that every day, whether it's an accident scene, whether it's a heart attack, or, I remember a few years ago, I was at my mom's house for Thanksgiving, and my mom had a heart attack and died right in front of me. And this story. And the first person there was a police officer, and I'm a police officer. And it's like, I remember seeing him come through that door with a defibrillator, and I'm thinking, as long as I've been a cop, I still looked at him like, here's the savior, he's coming to save my mom.
Superhero, yeah.
And it's, I wish people would see that is the majority of us. And even now, those guys are feeling like, why even bother? Why nobody wants, obviously we don't want bad cops, but nobody even wants good cops. And it's almost like people are getting to a point where it's like, I just don't want to do it anymore. Why put myself on the line for a community that doesn't want me there? And that's what I fear. And so I think, one prayer point would be that officers would see their value. They are needed, the good ones. They're needed to hold that line. Number two, that when change does present itself and reform, and that we would be receptive to that.
That the police would be receptive.
Right.
Yes.
Because things do need fixed, and that we would be open to fix it. When things are suggested that are, that is a solution, that we would be on board with saying, yeah, we need to fix that. And number three, I guess it would just be, that officers would remember who they are. It's not an us versus them. It's not the police versus the community. It's, the police against everybody. Just to remember we are the community. We're, I live in my community that I work in. I have, I live there. My kids go to school in the city that I work in. I shop there. I mean, most of my bills are paid in the community I live. That's my community. And so I want officers to remember where they come from, and not to lose heart that, deep down, these communities do want you. They want you there. They want to know that when they call, you're going to show up with that defibrillator. Yeah. They're going to be at the crash scene. That officers just wouldn't forget why they're doing what they're doing.
That's so good. And so I actually, for those of you that are watching, I actually wrote them down because, so prayer points. And for those of you that are watching, I'm encouraging you to make this list. Put it on your refrigerator, Put it on the dashboard of your car. Every time you pass a police officer, just pray. Yeah. God, just help their morale. Just build their morale. Let them be receptive, or receptivity is what I put, but let them be receptive when change comes, when positive change happens. Yeah. And then let them remember, what this is all about and how important they really are. Yeah. So, Tim, thank you for being with us tonight. This has been so good, and I've enjoyed our conversation, and I really appreciate you being here and just being so honest and being so open, because I know it is a very tedious time. But I felt like if there was anybody that could do this conversation, have this conversation, and be really, really honest and be completely non-offensive, you would be at the top of the list. And I really appreciate that. Let me just pray over you. And I'm going to pray over these right now for all of the officers all across America, but especially right here in our region. So, Father, I thank you for our time together, and I thank you for Tim, and I thank you for literally thousands of officers across the United States of America. Recently, I heard as many as 700,000 officers, and I'm praying for their morale. I pray, oh God, that you would help them to see the difference they're making, encourage their hearts, encourage them, bless them, be with them. Lord, I pray that as we start to see reform, and as we start to see new training methods, and as we start to see change coming to different departments on tactics and plans and ways to do things, Lord, that they would be receptive to them. Lord, I just pray that you would just allow there to be an openness that says, yes, we want to do what's good and right by our communities. And lastly, Lord, I just pray that you would help them to remember why they do what they do. When they see the child, when they see the older couple, when they see the families, when they see the good that's happening in their community, let it fill their hearts with joy, and let them just remember, I do this because I love my community, because I want to see my community healthy and whole. Now, Father, I just pray safety over all of our police officers. I pray that you give them wisdom. I pray that you would give them strength and help, Lord, and that you would look after them. And I thank you for them. I thank you for them. And Lord, according to your word, we honor the authority of our community, and we honor our police officers and our first responders today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.